tuning in live on Facebook right now through the page of Crop Life Philippines. Yes, aside from the Zoom call, we're airing this video live in the Facebook page of Crop Life Philippines. All you have to do is search Crop Life Philippines on Facebook. Welcome to our Crop Life Philippines webinar on fall armyworm management strategies and status in the Philippines. First, first off, let me introduce myself. My name is Brian Rivera. I am the chair of the Advocacy and Communications Committee of Crop Life Philippines, and I'm also connected with Bayer Crop Science as the head of communications and public affairs, science, and sustainability. I'll be your host for this 2-hour learning and exchange session. And looking at the participants, I see that we already have some people connected in the call. I believe we've invited a lot of representatives from both the government and the private sector. Of course, I'd like to mention that we have representatives from the DA Corn Program and also the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority. So apologies if I'm not able to mention everyone, but just the same, we have more than 70 participants already connected so early. So thanks for tuning in on time. And I hope that everyone would have a learning and insightful session for the next 2 hours. We have our official welcome to all virtual speakers and participants, I invite everyone to stand and proudly sing our national anthem to be followed immediately with the invocation.
Bayang magiliw, pelos ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, buyan ka ng magiliw, sa manlulupin, kita masisingil, sa lalat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo bahaw, ay nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang tinamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y nagumpay na nagdidikin, ang bituin at araw niya ay nagpapalay pagdidikin. Lupa ng araw ng maraming pagsita, paglayalangin sa likod. Aming ligaya dapat may mamagin, at namatay lang tayo sa'yo.
Thank you. Now, looking at our participants list, we have almost 100 participants right now in the call. Once again, thanks again for joining in early in the morning. I hope that you already had your breakfast and coffee because we all want the energy of the participants. Even though you're online at your homes or in the office, we hope that you can participate later on because we're having some Q&A sessions for the panelists this morning. Now, why did we choose the fall armyworm as a topic? So maybe I'll just give a quick history. The fall armyworm is really a native in South America. Eventually, it moved on to Africa and then it reached Asia. In fact, it made its way to countries like India, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, China, and of course here in the Philippines. If I remember it correctly, even last year, the DA was already facing the problem of fall armyworm, and then there were measures being implemented by both the government and the private sector. Now, with corn being the second most important cereal crop in the Philippines, of course, it makes sense for stakeholders to band together and find ways on how to control this insect pest. We know that there have been previous sessions on fall armyworm, not just from CropLife, but also from other organizations. And we believe that information sharing should be a continuous journey for us because everything is at stake when we talk about the national productivity of corn. And that's the reason why we are all here together. We're here to learn and share what we know about this pest. Now, to welcome us in this webinar, let me call on our CropLife president, none other than Ms. Veronica Tiburcio.
Thanks, Brian. I hope everyone can hear me and can see me. Can I hear a yes?
Yes, yes, we can hear you and
Thank
see
you.
you.
Yes, you can hear.
Yep. Magandang ani and good morning to everyone. It is real pleasure and great to see familiar faces from the industry. As mentioned by Brian, thank you so much for taking time to attend this timely and relevant webinar topic. I really pray that all of you and your family are safe and healthy and already adapted to the new normal. This pandemic is really something. And we pray that we Filipino strive this and continue to be strong. So for today's webinar, it's all about fall armyworm. I think it was in June 2019 when this species detected in corn in one of the provinces in Luzon, particularly Cagayan, I think. And thanks to the immediate response of our government agency, the Department of Agriculture, including the FPA, NCPC, even the academe, joined forces for us to have a visibility of this infestation. So I think BPI also leading that report as well. So without that, we will not be able to identify this fall armyworm. And as mentioned, it's really a critical pest that we need to address. Again, thank you so much to our government agencies, academe, and of course the private sectors for having one goal to manage this pest. Today, we will understand more of the status of FAO and what are the preparations that we need. Again, at the end of the day, what we wanted is to make sure that our farmers will continue to have their harvest. They will continue to have productivity, and that is our main objective. So may I request everyone to please sit back and looking forward to a participative discussion with all of you. If you have questions or if you have any suggestions, please, this is the right venue for us to say that. Let's share what we know. Let's help one another. Thank you, Brian. That's all. So God bless everyone.
Thank you, Veronica, Ms. Veng, for that inspiring message. And I agree with you definitely that ultimately what we want is that farmers would get the harvest that they expect using the technologies that they invest in their livelihood. Now, let me probably just enumerate first the main objectives of this webinar as probably shown to you in the event page in Facebook. So I will lay them out. The first objective is to update everyone on the status of fall armyworm in the Philippines. Fall armyworm infestation, I mean, the previous season has just passed, and then we can hear later from our resource speaker on how bad the damage was from fall armyworm in corn crops, depending on the different regions. The second objective is to gain understanding on the National Fall Armyworm Action Plan and Management Strategies from the government through the Department of Agriculture. And last but not the least, the objective is to share the industry's perspective on fall armyworm and the importance of insect resistance management. Now, before I go to the first speaker, we have a very short video to show you, and just to introduce the video, and for the benefit of some of you who are not so familiar with the fall armyworm, this video was produced by CABI. CABI is the Center for Agriculture and Bioscience International. It's a nonprofit intergovernment organization focusing on agriculture and environmental issues. So I think that the forte is creation and dissemination of relevant scientific knowledge. They developed a series of videos on fall armyworm, and we're going to show you just one. But we think that this is going to be very useful for people not in agriculture, and so that at least before we go to the first speaker, you would have an idea on how the fall armyworm works through its growing cycle in corn. So now let's zoom in our attention to the video.
The full armyworm life cycle includes egg, 6 growth stages of caterpillar development, pupa, and moth. The cycle begins when 100 to 200 eggs are laid on the underside of the leaves, typically near the base of the plant, close to the junction of the leaf and the stem. After hatching, the young caterpillars feed on leaves, leaving semi-transparent patches called windows. In young plants, the caterpillars prefer to eat the leaf whorl, but in older plants prefer the leaves around the cob silks. Caterpillars will also eat their way through the protective leaf bracts into the side of the cob where they feed on the developing kernels. By the time the caterpillars reach the top of the plant, they will be bigger and do the most damage, leaving ragged holes in the leaves. On young plants, this can kill the growing point, stopping new leaves or cobs from developing. After approximately 14 days, fully grown caterpillars will drop to the ground so they can pupate. Before pupating, the caterpillars will burrow 2 to 8 centimeters into the soil, or if the soil is too hard, then caterpillars will cover themselves in leaf debris instead. Around 8 or 9 days later, adult moths will emerge from the ground and start the cycle all over again.
Okay, so that was just a short video just to let you know the growing cycle of the fall armyworm, the reason why we see it every season, and the reason why it's going to be a more important pest in corn that we have to control and mitigate. Now, okay, let's move forward with the first speaker. To introduce our first speaker and a very important person, I would like to call on the Business Sustainability Head of Syngenta Philippines, Ms. Ruby Eduarte.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Before I introduce our first speaker, I just would like to remind the participants that in case of questions, you may post it using the Q&A button in your dashboard or control panel anytime during the session. However, our speaker will answer these questions only after he has completed his presentation, and we have been given 10 minutes for the Q&A later. So now, moving on to the introduction. Our first speaker is considered as a seasoned officer in the Department of Agriculture. He had several leadership roles in the department, namely Chief Operations Division and OIC Technical Director of DA Office 2, Cagayan Valley Region, Regional Executive Director, DA Cordillera Administrative Region, and Regional Executive Director, DA Cagayan Valley Region. Currently, he is the Special Technical Assistant of the National Corn, Cassava, and Sorghum Program and the head of the FAW Crisis Management Team. Today, he will share with us the fall armyworm status in the Philippines. Let us all welcome Dr. Lorenzo Caringian. Dr. Caringian, you may now have the floor.
Let's check if Dr. Caringian is already online.
Yeah, I'm online.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, we see you now.
Okay. Anyway, magandang umaga sa lahat. Good morning. Thank you, Ruby, for that very kind introduction. Also, thank you, Brian, for doing a very good job of emceeing and anchoring this webinar. Of course, my greetings to our CropLife officials, to Ma'am Veronica, the president of CropLife, and to our very good former ASEC Ed De Luna, my good friend. I also would like to greet all participants in this, of course, virtual meeting. We have invited, of course, our partners from the regional field offices represented by the respective regional coordinators and chief or the head of the regional crop protection centers na sila po yung naka-front line in combating this fall armyworm problem. Of course, my greetings and thanks to our other participants and of course, our consultants. I think is Doc Ravi Josie in. Of course, Dr. Leo Sebastian. We have invited them. And of course, other guests and participants. Well, to start with, thank you for giving us this opportunity to, of course, join this virtual meeting, an opportunity for us in the Department of Agriculture to convey to you the status of the fall armyworm in the Philippines. Of course, this is one of the uh, problems or the issues that we are now confronting in the sector. You know, the corn industry is a very, very big industry. It's about 43 billion industry, so to speak of, and it contributes about 5.6% to our GVA, which means if we do not do anything with this our problem, we will incur a lot of economic loss. And of course, today I am tasked to present to you the fall armyworm status in the Philippines. Included in my presentation are the actions taken and what are still to be taken so that we can have a sustainable and a continued, of course, a way of addressing the problem. So may I request the operator to present the first slide?
Screen share.
Wait lang po, i-kita namin sa presentation.
Share.
Presentation. Brian, can you now see in our screen my presentation? Kindly confirm, please.
Not yet, Director. Oh, it's loading, I think. Yeah.
Okay na.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay. So, in my presentation, ito yung sinasabi natin na estado po ng fall armyworm in our country today. Okay. Just like how we deal with the current pandemic, the COVID-19, of course, we are faced with, of course, the task of addressing a lot of problems in the agriculture sector. When our secretary first reported to office sometime last year, during that time, the agriculture sector was confronted with what we call the 3F. Of course, the falling prices of palay. And up to now, I think this is one of the problems that we are confronting in the field. Then another F is the African swine fever. In the news this morning, siya pa rin yung nagbibigay, nagdudulot ng, of course, high prices of pork in the market. And of course, the third F is the fall armyworm. This is high time for us to highlight and to present to you some of the issues confronting the corn industry, because if we do not do something about the fall armyworm, as I have said, it can cause a lot of problem. I think, as said earlier, kanina in the introduction, nababanggit na, of course, si Brian nabanggit niya, na ito yung peste na napakabago sa ating bansa. And of course, incidentally, it came from a region where I come from, in the region 2, particularly in Piat, Cagayan. And of course, nabigla tayo lahat dahil kung titignan natin yung prediction ng FAO, sabi nila darating sa ating bansa by the end of 2019, but it came 6 months ahead. That was in June. So since nandito na, we have to really deal with it. And of course, just to show you na kung bakit nakarating dito sa Pilipinas, of course, no one has the confirmation na saan siya galing. Pero since yung mode of incursion niya are wind, air, and sea, sinasabi, and most probably by wind. Alam po natin na in the last, of course, the last countries that were attacked by a fall armyworm, that is in 2019, where, of course, in the countries north of our country, particularly that of China, and since this fall armyworm can travel quickly, it's about 100 kilometers per night. So, most likely, I think yung motto ng yung fall armyworm is traveled by wind, and it reached the northern part of the Philippines, particularly in Cagayan. So yun po yung theory po namin. Pero of course, it doesn't matter kung saan siya galing, but what matters to us is para how will we deal with it. And just to show you na good enough for our regional office in Region 2, because they have detected that early in just one place in Piat. Then later on, it went to Gonzaga, then in Solana, Santa Ana, then it went to Isabela, the southern part of the Region 2. That is, of course, the province just south of Cagayan, and then it went to Ilocos. And then, of course, the incursion in Ilocos most probably ay independent that of Cagayan. And of course, kung titignan natin, sabi ko kanina, it is really affecting our industry. And when we say it affects our industry, it affects stakeholders. Kasi kung tatamaan yung mga pananim, affected din ang farmers or foreign farmers. At kung mababa ang yield or yung production natin, may consequential effect yan. Matatamaan yung ating feed millers, food processors, at bukod, higit sa lahat, yung mga nagdedepende sa corn industry, particularly our livestock and poultry sectors, and all stakeholders in the chain. So sabi ko kanina, just with an estimated yield loss of about 20%, valued at, or that's about 8 million metric tons, we can potentially lose about 20 billion in this problem. Pero kung titignan natin, we can do a lot. Of course, I'm glad that may earlier presentation on the growth stages of the crop, where it most likely saan tatama po yung fall armyworm. And we would like to inform you that as per the laboratory result that came from the National Crop Protection Center, naka-register po sila ng dalawang strain dito sa atin. It's called the rice and the corn strain. And I was asking them kung bakit sa ngayon, since pareho naman rice and corn strain, akala ko tatamaan yung rice. Pero sabi nila, favorite daw nila ang corn, which means since this fall armyworm can feed of about more than 300 species of say plants, mas palatable daw ang corn. So hanggat may corn, ayaw nila kainin yung rice. So maghanda din ang rice because may, of course, isang area sa Northern Luzon, particularly in Cordillera, na nakikita na ng, of course, incidents ng rice pero hindi nag-prosper. Ngayon, nasa sugarcane na tayo. And of course, when we talk about all crops, mas vulnerable pa rin ang corn. I think we have a lot of experts to explain kung bakit mas gusto ba nila ang corn. And of course, we have tried to monitor yung incidence niya on a per month since its first incidence in 2019. Makita po ninyo na from June to December 2019, very insignificant lang po ang incidence niya. Pero starting in, of course, in February, in 2020, makita na natin na tumataas na siya. So from, of course, yung first peak niya is just about 4,000 hectares. Of course, in the months of March and April, bumaba din siya precisely because these are the months na harvesting period. And again, nag-peak siya, nag-spike siya in June because these are the months, planting months na naman. And then as we enter yung period of harvesting, that's about August, September, and of course, this part of October, bumababa siya. Which means, yung incidence po ng fall armyworm is detected based on the crop stand of our crop since from planting up to harvesting. And this is a very good indicator for us to monitor what part of the month or what part of the cropping cycle should we best position or plan for our several interventions po dito sa fall armyworm. And we try to aggregate yung incidence niya on this wet season. When we say wet season, it starts from May 16 up to September 16. And as of course, October 15, we have registered about 700,000 hectares of standing crop. At ang reported, kung makita po ninyo, na area infested is about 12,000. Ang pinakamalaki na nakita po namin ng incidents ay dyan sa Cagayan Valley. Cagayan Valley because at that time, they were hit by, of course, by flood, by what we call flood, and then later on drought, and nag-replant sila. So nagkaroon sila ng late planting. That's one of the reasons why nagkaroon sila ng incidents ng mas mataas. Of course, other regions na more than 1,000 sila is yung sa Zamboanga, Northern Mindanao, and in Soxargen. Ito isang theory namin how this fall armyworm reaches almost all regions in the country now. Kasi akala namin mag-stick lang dito sa Luzon. Pero makita po natin na all over the country ay may incidence na ng fall armyworm. Which means 70% or 57 out of 81 provinces ay may incidence na ng fall armyworm. Or 19% of municipalities ay affected na. That is 288 out of 1,488 municipalities. Pero the good news is, as we analyze yung incidence niya, we only incur about 1.67, which means the area infested versus yung standing crop is only 1.67%. And the good news too also is our partners from the LGUs, from the regions, are very quick enough to respond to this problem and registering about 83% treatment. But the bad news also is when they did some kind of a sampling in the field, they registered about 44% degree of damage, which means if you have about 100 plants, 44 of that plants were damaged, or may incidents po na nakitaan. And this graph will show you yung sinasabi ko na about treatment. So, maganda din, most of the regions ay nag-respond po. Kung makikita po natin yung blue, yan yung area treated na po. Yung others ay either hindi sila nag-treat kasi patapos na po towards what we call the harvesting period. Others did not treat because of the absence of what we call some say inputs like pesticides, etc. Nevertheless, we are glad to note naman na hindi masyadong malala po ang problema in the regions. But as we approach the dry season, which means the November, December planting up to the March, April harvesting, ito po yung manmanan natin kasi ito yung period na most likely of course mag-peak yung fall armyworm incidents, and ito yung period din na inaasahan natin maganda sana ang harvest. And of course, just to show you na akala namin sa corn lang ang infestation. We have already registered some incidents on sugarcane, particularly in Cagayan Valley and in Western Visayas. And the good news naman, I come from, of course, Cagayan Valley, and yung incidents mo sa Cagayan Valley ay nandyan lang sa sa Tuaw and Piat Cagayan. Incidentally, my younger brother is the manager of the sugarcane regulatory administration of Region 2. So I got information from him na napuksa naman ang problema doon sa sugarcane areas. And of course, what have we done actually? Good enough, thanks to the leadership of our new Secretary William Didar, because very swift and quickly nag-allocate po siya, nag-provide po siya out of the quick response funds lodged at the office of the Secretary. So kaagad nag-release ng pera last June 2, this year, amounting to 150 million. At itong, of course, pera na ito ay ginamit para sa pagbili ng pheromone lures and, of course, pesticides. Of course, the pesticides includes the inorganic and the organic pesticides. And just a quick status of that, we have already obligated about 86% of that money, or out of the 150 million, naka-obligate na po tayo 130 million. Pero yung hindi medyo magandang balita na as of this time ay 28% pa lang yung disbursed, which means yung nabayaran out of those obligated ay nasa 28%. But I understand some regions incur, of course, out of their own COA rules and guidelines, na sabi nila kahit na-distribute na at kung hindi pa na-kompleto po yung mga documentation, mga papeles, ay hindi nila mababayaran. Although, marami naman ay na-distribute na sa local government units and in areas where these are affected. Pero may I just call the attention of Region 1, kung nakikinig po kayo, kayo lang po yung region na wala pang obligation. At that time, we were monitoring, pero nagkaroon yata kayo ng problema doon sa procurement at nagkaroon ng change in leadership kasi nagbago yung inyong regional executive director. So siguro ito yung dulot ng problema. Pero sana sikapin natin na ubusin po yung pera kasi we're expecting to have another tranche of some stimulus package na lalabas po sa region. At ito yung sinasabi ko. We have proposed another 100 million pesos for the regions. And this 100 million comes from our stimulus package na under Bayanihan 2 na na-propose. Of course, ginawa po namin ng kaukulang mga papeles na ito. All the budgetary requirements, the budgetary execution documents niya, etc. were already prepared. Initially, we have, of course, allocated per region yung allocation ninyo. And this is intended to procure directly inputs and some for your monitoring and, of course, from the information campaign. Kasi itong 100 million is part of the 470 million na nila secretary or Department of Agriculture, out of the 460
Hi, Director Enzo. Are you still there? I think we're having a problem, likely the internet connection somewhere. Hello, Director Enzo. I think we lost the office of Director Karangian. I'm not sure what happened there. So probably they're going to try to reconnect again. But before that, again, I'd like to remind everyone, thanks to Ruby for reminding, is that for any questions, do type them in the Q&A box. I see that there are some questions there, and when Director Karangian gets back online, we will have time to answer them. Now, in the meantime, while we're trying to fix that issue, maybe we can proceed to the next speaker of this program. And with that, I would like to call on our representative who will introduce the next speaker. He is the Product Development and Regulatory Affairs Lead for CB Andrews Asia, none other than Mr. Leo Valdez.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and attendees in today's Crop Life sponsored webinar on fall armyworm status and management strategies. Before I proceed, let me again re-echo what has been the guidelines of what has been mentioned by Ruby earlier. At the end of the presentation will be again another Q&A session. You can key in your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom. As the presentation goes along, our presenter only has limited time to answer your questions, so not all can be replied to orally. Anyway, all questions will be addressed by the speaker at the end of the presentation. So now allow me to introduce to you our next speaker. Our guest speaker is currently the chief of the Crop Protection Management Division of the Bureau of Plant Industry. She has 41 years of fruitful and definitely rewarding local and international experiences behind her in the fields of crop protection and integrated pest management, wildlife management, and farmers' field school extension services. At her age, we hope she does not consider as yet an early retirement from government service because she is a worthy and significant contributor to the trust of our country's agriculture industries. Without much ado, allow me to turn over this portion of the program to Ms. Wilma R. Quaterno for her presentation on national fall armyworm management strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Ms. Wilma R. Quaterno. Ms. Wilma, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. So good morning to all. Good morning to all my higher officials in the Department of Agriculture. Good morning to my fellow workers in the Department of Agriculture. Good morning to all who are subscribing to your video, and especially to my workmates, the regional crop pest management centers, who are really the one doing the work in the field. So we've been working on fall armyworm, as per Director Kayangan said, since the start that this fall armyworm was cautioned us by FAO. It was in January 2019 when we learned that there is this fall armyworm. So since the start, we decided to work on this until we had the chance to see one larva in the north, in Cagayan. So the activities started there. So this is my slide, the fall armyworm control and management strategies. This was conceptualized and drafted through the help of our consultants in the Department of Agriculture and through our experiences in managing other pests like the fall armyworm. So next slide, please. So we have general strategies and we have also core strategies in addressing the fall armyworm. So these strategies involve both farmers up to the national level. So it involves prevention before the pest come, avoidance when the pest is already around. Then it involves also the monitoring when the pest is already here, and also the suppression when the pest is already doing some damage. So in general strategies, we have to avoid and prevent the occurrence and spread of the fall armyworm. So from the time we learned about this fall armyworm, it is not yet in the country. We decided to have some brochures and other information materials to be given to our fellow workers in the Department of Agriculture who are working on pests, and also some brochures for our farmers. And also our Bureau Plant Industry Plant Quarantine started to issue some ordinances regarding the strict compliance on detecting the presence of fall armyworm in every commodities going into the country. Then for the farmers, we help them also how to detect the pest by showing how to know that if it is a fall armyworm. So we had also the chance to have some trials on the use of pheromones, and it's really a very hard job for us because we don't have pheromones here in the country. So it took us a hard time soliciting some samples from other countries. So unfortunately, we were able to tackle that. Then with the help of the regional crop protection centers in the local government units, we try to point out the high-risk areas and hotspot for fall armyworm in the Philippines. So during the first time we had the fall armyworm, we don't know yet where it really occurs now abundantly. But after some experiences, we learned that it occurs in early seedling stage and of course, in areas where there are more open pollinated varieties. So that when farmers learn this and also the technicians, they help each other in monitoring and early addressing the fall armyworm management. And we have also some actions and preparation on how to contain large-scale fowl damages like the outbreaks. So I know many fields, especially those open pollinated varieties field, they have experienced these outbursts of population in their fields. And of course, we have to sustain capacity building and awareness in managing this fall armyworm. Although at present, we are really trying our best to package some technology, which technology is better for one area to another, because as we see, status and capabilities of farmers in different areas of the country in corn varies. So the observations they are gathering also with regards to how armyworm damage also varies. So we need to have a technology which is location specific, and that is our target. And to do this, we need to coordinate not just in the government, but also with other local government units and the private sectors who really have the advantage, especially the private sectors, who really have the advantage of doing more researches that are even more, how do you call that? that are even more higher or applied or basic researches that are really needed before we can come up with applied strategies. So our secretary is really hoping for development of strategies so that we can have our whole Armyworm integrated pest management. So these are some general strategies which we think will help us in addressing the fall armyworm problem in the country. So next slide, please. So these are the core strategies. As I've said, we have the PAMS strategy, which means P is for prevention, A is for avoidance, then M is for monitoring, and S is for suppression. So these are core strategies that will be improved through research for development. And those strategies that we think are suitable for the use of our farmers will be sustained through capability development of our farmers, especially because farmers are the frontliners in this fall armyworm problem in our country. And this capacity building and research for development will be more enhanced with the help of our stakeholders like the private sectors, the local governments, the farmers themselves, and even the LGUs also. And of course, it's to be led by the Department of Agriculture. Next slide, please. So these are the details of our core strategies. So for prevention and avoidance, we have awareness campaigns. We do this by dissemination of information, by meetings, by multimedia platforms. And this is being led by the Bureau of Plant Industry, the ATI, and of course, the beneficiaries always are the farmers, in some LGUs also. And as you can see in this responsible agency, it varies in the different activities. So we issue also pest advisory. I think we issued pest advisory. The very first pest advisory we issued on fall armyworm is last, I think it's May, when we do not have yet the fall armyworm. So that was the first issuance of the pest advisory on fall armyworm. Then now from time to time, we have national advisory as well as regional advisory. The regional advisories are being issued by the regional crop pest management centers and being supported by the Bureau of Plant Industry in other commodity programs of the Department of Agriculture, especially the corn program. So again, our target beneficiaries for this are the farmers and the farmers cooperatives. Then before, as I've said before, the fall armyworm entered the country, we have some enforcement of plant quarantine orders. Though we said that fall armyworm is a strong flyer, so it's hard to prevent it from entering any island in the country. So most of the provinces in the country are already infected or infested with fall armyworm, but there are still some barangays and some municipality that are not, especially of course those who are not planting corn. But Dr. Karanyan said that some fall armyworm have been observed already in sorghum and in sugarcane. But as per our monitoring, it did not prosper. Next slide, please. Then we have also another action for prevention and avoidance. So we do some crop diversification, though some of these synchronous planting, then clean culture, it is really to be studied yet, because these are some experiences of other countries who have damaged by fall armyworm. So in our country, we are just starting to really determine if this will work for us. But these actions have already worked in other pests. So that's why we will be trying it also in our country. There are some experiences already, but only few. Maybe when we have our the full blast of Farmer Field School, we can really say that these actions will really apply to our country. So some of these details are intercropping, relay cropping, sequential or alternate cropping, and multiple cropping. For the synchronous planting, we can do zoning or clustering of areas into different pest risk outbreaks that considers weather and cropping pattern. So we can do all simultaneous or closed season planting, and we can practice also clean culture. In practicing clean culture, we have some parts to research also because we don't know if complete weeding or partial weeding or the plowing under of stubbles just after harvest will really help in lessening the population of the fall armyworm. So with these actions, I think the farmers are the lead because they are the one in the field. So with the help of the technicians, especially the regional crop protection centers and the local government unit technicians, they can do this and they can really see to it if these actions will really help us in managing the fall armyworm. Next slide, please. So we can do also this is now monitoring. So we can do also some planting of trap crops wherein you can monitor the early arrival of the fall armyworm. So when there is a trap crop, it means you are trapping the, the coming of the first fall armyworm. And that is very important in crop pest management. When you know that the first individual or the first batch of plant of fall armyworm enter in an area, then you can do or you can plan readily on what to do because you can see the first egg and that first egg is the start of the population in that area. If you can control that, then you will have no more problem on fall armyworm. So it's easy to plant trap crops if you know the variety of the crops that we are going to plant. So we are still testing on this. So maybe the other stakeholders can also test on this and we can help each other on the determination of trap crops in the Philippines. Then we can observe the presence also of pras, egg masses, larvae, and adult, and its initial damages in crab crops and other surrounding areas. As we have observed in the field, even at the earliest stage of the corn, there are already different stages of larva present. So it means we do not know where it comes from, but I think it comes from the vegetation surrounding the area. And although I haven't observed or I even I do not heard yet from the RCPC that they saw marching larvae, but there is a doubt in me that maybe they are marching because how come that there are some different stages of larvae in early stage of the crop? So maybe it is something that we have to study. And we have to use also bait trap. Some farmers are already using the bait trap. They are just doing some bait trap from their kitchen and use it in their field. Like the one we had, the molasses with vinegar. So it is something to be proven also, but some farmers said it's doing good. And we have also the use of commercial pheromones and lures. There was one already approved by the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority, and that is being used by our farmers with the help of our regional crop pest management centers. Next, please. So I cannot see that. So we have for the for the identification of hotspots. So we identify or prioritize the conduct of surveys in areas planted to OPB because based on our observations, OPB are really the one liked by fall armyworm. So many instances that high population can be observed in open pollinated varieties. So it is a key indicator that open pollinated varieties are really susceptible to fall armyworm. So we can check also the presence of pawpras, egg, masses, larvae, and adults in monitoring for fall armyworm. And to assess the damage also and the infestation of the fall armyworm, we are now using and validating the presence through the FAO protocol on infestation assessment. So this assessment is being done by the regional crop pest management centers, although there is a plan to invite also some crop protection staff from the universities in the respective regions so that they can help us in the assessment of fall armyworm in the respective areas. Next, please. So for the overall management of fall armyworm, we are using the integrated pest management. So we will be using cultural, physical, biological, mechanical, and others. So we will have synchronous planting, we will have manual eradication, we will have incentivized collection of larvae. It's not yet happening, the incentivized collection of larvae. But this one, adding sand or ashes in leaf whirl, some are doing it also. Then the mass production and release of biological control agents, we are doing it already. And some are already observing natural enemies in the field. Several RCPCs have already started trying to mass produce these natural enemies. I think this is better because just like other pests before, after 2 to 3 years of infesting or manifestation in the country, we can see some natural enemies progressing their population. So I think it's better to enhance these natural enemies because natural enemies are the sustainable management for the fall armyworm, I think. But in case of big problems or high population of fall armyworm, we cannot help but to use organic pesticides. So we are doing this already because when we see that there is a big population of fall armyworm in an area, we apply at once inorganic pesticide. Then after some days, 3 days, it will be followed by organic or botanical pesticides and the release of biological control agents. Next slide, please. So the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority have already issued a list of pesticides for fall armyworm. So these pesticides, I think, should not be just used for the sake of controlling the fall armyworm. It must be used judiciously to prevent insect resistance. I know from the literature that those fall armyworm coming from America have already their own resistant to pesticides in fall armyworm. And from the last meeting I had, China said that their fall armyworm, there is so already the resistance gene in their fall armyworm. And they said that their fall armyworm came from, I think, from America and somewhere in Africa, I think. I don't know, but they said that it's already there. Then, if our suspicion that our fall armyworm is coming from China, it's just a suspicion, then maybe it has already its uh, resistance genes. So I hope the the industry as well as the academe will help us in determining whether our fall armyworm has these resistance genes, because it will help us match if we know if there is resistance in our fall armyworm. So for the suppression of fall armyworm, as I've said, we are now using integrated pest management. So we have cultural, we have physical, biological, organic, and inorganic pesticides. But hoping we will not experience resistance in fall armyworm, even if it is in organic, because BT is organic, but there is some resistance occurring with BT. Next, please. So these are some of the biological control agents we are testing in the field. The presence of lacewing is not in the FAO manual, but we are trying this one. And we don't know yet if it is really working, but we keep on trying everything we have in our laboratories with the regional crop pest management centers. Next, please. So this is the list of registered agricultural pesticides approved by FPA. And the academe is already testing the effectivity of these pesticides. And I think the Bureau of Plant Industry will also test some that are popular to farmers. Next, please. So there's still much research to be needed in this management of fall armyworm, especially the basic ones. I hope everybody will help in addressing this development of technologies for fall armyworm. So there are still few technologies that are being generated. And I hope with the farmers, we can have some location-specific technology which we can verify and apply to address the fall armyworm. So these applied research in the Department of Agriculture, our secretary there has already provided some funding for this. So some went to the academe and some went to the DA agencies. Next slide, please. Then for the training of farmer empowerment, the corn program has already scheduled farmer training of trainers together with the Agricultural Training Institute. And I think this will start in November. But during the initial stage of fall armyworm problem in our country, we already conducted national training on fall armyworm in Cagayan and in Mindanao. So we have initial trainings already. Then with the FAO Technical Cooperation Program, we have already conducted some short trainings, and still we are starting to conduct farmer field school. So I think the conduct of farmer field school in the country will help us in developing technologies that are really usable for the farmers because they will be location specific. So I think we need this farmer field school. And then the conduct of farmers field day through this farmers field day with those farmers joining the search for technology for FAO management. Then during Farmers Field Day, they can talk with each other and share their knowledge on what they had about fall armyworm management. So I think we need these activities. Next, please. Next slide, please. So we are doing also some infographics. We are distributing it in the different regions and the different provinces. And this is being led by ATI and being supported by ATI and AFID and being supported by the regional crop pest management centers. Previously, the Bureau of Plant Industry have distributed also some infographics on fall armyworm. And ATI is planning to document the best practices for fall armyworm. And this will start with maybe with after the training of trainers on fall armyworm. As at present, we have the database on fall armyworm. The Bureau of Plant Industry is maintaining it. And I think with the help of ATI and the CON program, we will have a good database on FAO information. And maybe the industry can help us also with this database. Next, please. Here, we have to share information. So the government and the private sectors needs to support each other in maintaining a good information on fall armyworm. So I hope through this CropLife will share also information and be with us always in the management of fall armyworm. And I hope through this webinar, we can work together always. As always, we're working together with ASEC. With ASEC de Luna. So maybe we can deal with fall armyworm sustainably if we are helping each other. So we share and help each other on the information needed and the technology needed for fall armyworm. So we should pass the fall armyworm problem as one. So I think that's the message. We should be together in combating this fall armyworm problem. So I think this is all for my presentation. And thank you very much to all who helped us in crafting this FAO protocol for fall armyworm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Coterno, on that excellent presentation. We are now in the...
Hi, Leo. Sorry,
Yes, yes.
sorry to butt in.
All right, all right.
Director Enzo just told me that he wants to first finish his presentation because he has 2 more slides. Maybe we can proceed with that
Go ahead,
first.
go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Director Enzo, welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Just to wind up and of course give you what are the actions taken by the DA. Okay, papakita namin.
Yes, sir. If you have a slide to show, you can project it on the
papakita
screen.
namin. Quickly lang po. Yung next slide. Okay, kita po na ninyo.
Loading lang po, sir.
Okay na, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yung unang po ginawa, of course, first things first, na-create po ang DA ng what we call the FAO Crisis Management Team. 2 levels po ito. Yung una, interagency, which means kasama po
Director,
natin
di po namin nakikita yung screen ninyo.
Hello.
Blanco pa rin po yung screen.
Blanco the screen. Dali lang
Yan,
po.
okay na. Okay na po.
Okay na?
Yep,
Okay, I was saying a while ago po na of course in everything kailangan may mangyari na organizational setup to constitute yung sinasabi po natin na management team to address the problem. So 2 levels po na create na management team. Yung una is yung FAO Crisis Management Team composed of other agencies like of course yung halos lahat ng mga departments include the ILG, of course DTI, the mga ganon. Ang pinaka chairman po nito ng interagency is no less than the uh, executive secretary at Malacanang. Yung second level po is internal to DA. Yung sinasabi po natin na National Management Team. Incidentally, ako po yung program director nito, and that's why we came up with a lot of activities now. Katulad yung na-present po ng BPI by Wilma Paterno. And then the second po is yung na-present ni Madam Wilma kanina, the crafting of the national management strategies and protocols. We did a lot of what we call consultations with our partners both from the DA, local government units, and the private sector. At nabuo nga po yung management strategies and protocols na yan. Then of course, financially, tulad na i-present ko kanina, meron na tayo, na-release na ito yung 150 million Quick Response Fund na ipakita ko din yung status and yung status of disbursements and obligations. And we also refocus some of our 2020 budget sa corn program to buy or purchase inputs like pesticides, pheromone lures, etc. Kasi doon sa original work and financial plan namin ng 2020 ay hindi po kasama po ang inputs for pesticides, etc. Kasi nakalans po ito under their what we call Integrated Laboratory Division Fund na nandun nagdraw ang RCPC na kanilang pondo. Then also, recently, nabanggit ko, hopefully the money will be released soon because this is now part of the stimulus to package. Yung 470 million, na 370 million ay para sa ating mga regional crop protection centers at yung 100 million po ay yung mga inputs and other interventions. And then yung lastly po, yung partnership with the private sector. Hindi ko lang nabanggit dito yung crop life, pero kasama po natin ang crop life dito, etc. And the academy. And of course, ano bang kakaharapin po natin na gagawin? Ito yung importante po. We have already indicated to our regional partners, the regional field offices, na magmula ngayon, dapat kasama po or ma-mainstream po ang FAO management protocols in all their crop production activities, which means in anything na preparatory to the establishment of crops up to the monitoring, provision of inputs, kailangan po naka-mainstream, nakasama po ang FAO. Just like a case in point is yung if you have been conducting some technology promotion meetings on corn, dapat kasama dyan ang FAO management. Second is we have required all regional offices to now prepare the respective regional FAO action plan. When I say regional, they can break down or detail it up to the provincial and municipal level, what we call the action plan. And then, yung number 3 dito is we have to secure more funding support for the implementation of FAO mindset. Alam po namin, sinasabi po ng BPI and other experts na once FAO is there, it's already there na halos forever. At mabanggit ko lang po, nung nasa US kami, we visited what we call wide areas planted to sorghum. At that time, may initial incidents tayo ng FAO. And I said, nung nakakita kami ng fall armyworm doon sa sorghum plant, sabi parang, oh, you have fall armyworm in this place. I was shocked to hear from them na FAO in the US is not really a big deal. To them, nandyan na. Of course, because everything is in place to them. Meron silang sustainable way of addressing it. And sabi pa nila, meron yung natural predators na in the place na kung minsan Yun daw yung kanilang army to combat yung mga peste natin. And lastly po, yung we have to expand partnerships. Thanks, for example, today, na yung partner natin is Crop Life, na you are joining us in this war against fall armyworm. Somehow, yung ma-share po ninyo sa amin na expertise ninyo, experiences sa crop life. Mamaya, pakinggan po natin yung discuss ninyo on insect resistance management, and we would be very, very happy to hear that, to learn from that, and hopefully we can mainstream it again to our what we call FAO management strategies. So ito po yung kabuuan ng ating presentation ngayon. And mamaya po makakaroon po tayo ng Q&A sa lahat na nakikinig po. Alam po ninyo, if we can solve one problem one at a time, alam ko napakarami po ang problema sa ating agrikultura. Yung just recently concluded na tawag dito, yung nangyari na bagyo by Pipito, which devastated about 347 initially hectares reported to corn in the region 2, region 3, yung mga nearby, yung mga northern Luzon and central Luzon areas. Huwag natin po manliitin yung damage idudulot po ng fall armyworm. Just like other damages brought by other natural calamities po. So, yun po ang ating panawagan. And I am very, very happy to inform you that no less than our Secretary Dar, is very, very serious in really addressing the problem. In fact, kinukumusta niya ito lagi sa aming Manco meeting just to indicate and to show us how serious he is in dealing with even this kind of problem. So sa lahat po nakinig na ating presentation, kayo ay nagpapasalamat, and we can answer some of your questions meron po. Maraming salamat po. Brian.
Okay.
Leo?
Okay. Thank you for that, sir. We're now in the Q&A portion. And there are a lot of questions here po sa inyo, sir. Director Enzo, on for example, this question is from Mr. Wilfredo de Mesa Jr. May strong evidence na po ba kung na-infest na din ng FAW ang BT corn? Director Enzo?
Let me answer that point. In the analysis that we made, at first we were alarmed to show na about 85% of the total area infested ay mga areas planted to GM. Pero it should not alarm us kasi when we did some kind of investigation, we have not really diagnosed doon sa area na yon na kahit GM corn siya ay yung BT yung BT seeds ang na-attack, kasi we all know na yung mga BT, yung mga GM seeds natin ay meron siyang what we call refuge seeds. So yung unlike before na yung refuge seeds natin ay na-separate po yung refuge seeds from the GM seeds. Sa ngayon ay nahalo kasi So doon sa incidents po in that GM cornfield, hindi po natin ma-isolate kung refuge seeds nga ba yun or what we call yung mga GM seeds. So we have to accept na there are GM areas na infected, pero ang challenge sa atin ngayon, and I am appealing to our regional corn coordinators, to our CPC heads, and even BPI, to now start what we call conducting a more or less detailed and yung diagnosis or analysis o yung mga incidents na yon. So that information will help us help us to really say na meron na siyang infestation or ina-attack ng fall armyworm ang BT corn seeds na po natin. So yun po, sagot ko doon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Director Enzo. Meron pong related question dito on biotech, no? It came from Dr. Gabriel Romero. Where do you actually? This question is for Miss Wilma, I think. Miss Milwa, no? Where do you classify genetic or biotech resistance among the strategies?
I think it is included in our integrated pest management strategy. So it's more on resistant variety.
Okay. Okay, meron din po kay... Thank you, Ms. Wilma. Again, Ms. Wilma, from Roynick Aquino, there are some seed companies claiming that their hybrid corn varieties are FAW resistant. Did we already conduct efficacy trials to confirm their claims?
Based on the records of my staff, because we are the one having the database for insect resistance management on GM crop, according to our record, there is no GM event which is already in the Philippines that is registered for that is resistant to fall armyworm. So I think those companies saying that they are resistant, maybe it is just included in their stock genes. So maybe there are some effect or some manifestation that it is resistant.
But so there is also a need to do efficacy trials to confirm.
Yeah. Can I butt in?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, I heard a report. In fact, there has been also some what we call information now being promoted or disseminated of some companies na meron na silang what we call varieties. For example, Intrasec by Corteva is saying na resistant siya, pero sabi nila these varieties used to be a variety before. Now they have undergone what we call testing. Of course, Bayer, andyan si Brian, yung kanila VT Double Pro. Pero ang suggestion sa kanila, tama yung sabi ni Wilma na first we have to validate this. Head encourage them na since we have given instruction to regions na makakaroon ng what we call derby. So lahat yung mga known varieties to be resistant to FAO, ilalagay natin doon sa derby, corn derby natin, and we will evaluate it. And of course, yung pinaka dyan is dapat makakaroon siya ng what we call registration from the FPA, really na attesting to the fact na talaga resistansya. Yun yung pinaka the best doon. And we will be very happy kung ang resulta ay talaga resistant to FAO siya. So, yun yung kakalat natin later on after we have received confirmatory reports or even yung masinasa licensing registration documents showing proof talaga ng mga resistant mga varieties na ito. So, once we have this information, don't worry, Roynick and other sa mga nakikinig sa atin, once we receive information, we will disseminate to you. Pero at your end, I think particularly dyan sa Ilagan, because the Cagayan Valley Experiment, the Cagayan Valley Research Center, dyan sa Ilagan has been tagged or identified as the National Research Center for Fall Armyworm. So siguro gawa na kayo ng inyong trial dyan na pagkasama-samahin lahat yung mga known varieties, tapos i-test natin. Pangalawa, not only varieties. Ang suggestion ko, lahat yung mga known pesticides, be it organic or inorganic, i-test din ninyo. And then let's come up with, of course, some evaluation and results At ang pinaka ano diyan, na suggestion ko is let's come up with a field day pa rin kahit may pandemic. Hopefully yung mga sumusunod na months medyo maluwag na tayo, for our farmers to see for themselves kung ano ba nga yung talaga mga varieties or best interventions na pwede natin ilalagay sa field, be it a variety or pesticide intervention. So yun po yung aking masasabi tungkol dyan. Thank you po.
Thank you, sir. Meron pong question dito. There's a question here from Mr. J. Sagario, and I think this is for Ma'am Wilma. May I clarify the role of the DA Regulatory Division, considering that we are also conducting surveillance in the field? Ma'am?
With regards to fall armyworm,
Yes po.
so ang regulatory division po, ang siyang nag-form ng monitoring team for the pest and disease sa region. Then maybe ang tinatan niyo po in relation to the recently issued na approved na Department Order number 9. So in relation to Department Order number 9, ang regulatory division po will work hand in hand in terms of pest surveillance and also TUPAW. Oh. So you are the one who will organize the pest monitoring team, but in coordination with the regional crop pest management, you will be doing the surveillance of the different pests in the field.
Okay, okay. So, meron po ritong another question from Juanito Baring. RCPC, I think this is for Ma'am Wilma, no? RCPC is asking our support in monitoring FAW incidents. We will need a simple form for this, and the LGU executives must agree for compliance, considering that most of the AEWs are multitask. And yes, they need the training. The proposal is to include the checklist of the requirements for AEW incentives. May we know your advice?
Actually, we have already the app for monitoring the fall armyworm. So with regards to AEW po, magkakaroon po tayo ng training in relation to that para malaman natin ano yung mga forms, ano yung mga dapat na kailanganin natin. So before po naman na makapag surveillance kayo, I hope na in place na yung training at saka yung application for monitoring is mayroon na sa inyong mga gadgets. Kasi nakaano na po tayo ngayon application na. So pag-submit talaga is very fast. Diretso agad sa Bureau of Plant Industry yung nakukuha ninyo using the app for fall armyworm and other corn pest.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I think we can only accommodate one more question for this before we go to the next speaker. This last question is from John Alfred Samson. This, I think this is for Director Enzo. Are there studies being undertaken to know if FAW in Philippines are predominantly C strain, or if we also have subpopulations of the R strain? Thank you.
Actually, still to be confirmed by yung sinabi ko kanina na yung mga rice strain or the corn strain ay yun nga ba yung yung ba nga totoo. Of course, later on we have to network with the National Crop Protection Center based in Los Baños for that information. Pero part of the research studies na i-encourage po namin doon sa mga upcoming R&D projects to be funded either directly by the Bureau of Agricultural Research or funded by the RFOs ay tungkol sa anything that deals all about the fall armyworm, its ecology, etc. So by the time na magkakaroon po tayo ng information, then we will be happy to inform you. Also, I would like to react those yung second yung earlier question kanina about AEWs.
Yes.
Correct po na in fact it's one of my recommendations to our regional field offices. It's high time that we have to put as one of their targets or yung what we call commitment targets as part of a requirement to receiving their incentives, yung activities involved with the fall armyworm. I know na ang very active na gumagalaw po regarding yung monitoring, information campaign, and of course, directly distributing and supervising yung implementation ng ating mga say control measures like pesticides, etc. ay nandyan sa local government units. So it's high time din na dapat may involve sila and properly incentivize. So yun yung isang pakiusap ko po. So having said that, we have to really put that in our action plan para sa ganun walang question ng ating mga local government executives just in case may magtatanong po regarding requirements of receiving incentives. So yun po ang share ko. Thank you po. Thank you po.
Thank you po. Thank you, sir. Director Enzo, thank you, Ma'am Wilma. Much as we still have more questions to our speakers, I believe that we have to cut this Q&A portion in the interest of time because we still have another presenter waiting. So those unanswered questions will be replied to immediately later. No? Thank you. So back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Leo, for leading that Q&A session. And of course, thank you to Director Carangyan and Ms. Wilma Quaterno for your answers to the questions. While you're still with us and during the presentation, maybe you can type in the answers in the Q&A function, right? There are some questions there that you might be able to answer while we're still here in the Zoom meeting. Now with that, we will proceed to our third and last speaker, and then we will have another 10-minute Q&A for our speaker. Let me introduce him to the participants. Our next speaker has been an entomologist for nearly 2 decades, handling research, teaching, product development, commercial, and leadership roles in both public and private institutions. He completed his master's in entomology at North Dakota State University in the US and Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, majored in entomology at University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He has been working on biotech corn for more than 15 years. Among his milestones are bioefficacy and value assessment trials of BT corn, VT Double Pro, and Roundup Ready corn in the Philippines and in Vietnam. He was also instrumental in the adoption of refuge to prolong BT corn technology. He's been involved in various capacity building and knowledge transfers as a speaker and trainer relating to biotech corn in Southeast Asia and Pakistan region. Currently, he is the agronomic system manager for corn in Southeast Asia and Pakistan at Bayer Crop Science, and he's also an accredited researcher for entomology and weed science of the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority. To talk about fall armyworm and the importance of IRM or insect resistance management, please give a virtual welcome to Mr. John Fajardo.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank CropLife for inviting me in this webinar. So let me share my screen. I will be discussing fall armyworm and insect resistance management. Brian, can you confirm if you can see the slide now?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Okay, so for this webinar, what I'll be discussing is the definition of insecticide resistance management, or IRM, why we need that, what are some of the strategies and some best practices that we can use, as well as resources to ensure that we will have successful integrated insecticide resistance management. Okay, so by definition, insecticide resistance management uh, refers to strategies, of course, including implementations that can delay or suppress the increase of pest population that actually overcome the negative effect of the product. So when I say product, it would refer to an insecticide or a plant incorporated protectant like transgenic crops or BT corn in this case. So how this insect resistance of insect becomes a problem. And this has been recorded in several insect pests and crops, and even in fall armyworm as well. So initially, of course, the insecticides would be effective against the particular insect. What happens is that with continuous use and incorrect usage, what happens is that the insecticide would be inefficient after some time. So due to mutation or adaptation of the insect, the insecticide or the product itself would have reducing efficacy to that particular pest. So that's why this insect resistance happens. And why is this happening? There are four mechanisms of resistance. The first one is target site. So target site resistance is essentially a lock and key mechanism. So for a susceptible insect and an effective insecticide molecule, there is this particular target site, and which is similar to a lock and key. When it binds successfully, then the insect normally dies. If an insect develops a resistance, the target site here will be altered or modified. So as a result, the insecticide molecule is not effective anymore. Okay, the other one is metabolic resistance. So this is where the insects would normally have more or modified increase in enzyme activity that can break down a particular insecticide. So here from one, it will become more enzymes or modified. That means the insect can break down the negative effect or can counteract the negative effect of the insecticide. That's why it becomes resistant. So these are the two common mechanisms. Although we also have some what we call physical adaptation, wherein the insect adapt. For example, in this case, the resistant insect would have waxy or thicker covering. The other uncommon mechanism is also behavioral. So the insect, for in this case, an example, since insecticides are normally applied on top of the canopy, then the insect's behavior changes. So they actually go like the underside or other parts that are hidden, so that they will not be affected. Okay, so what's the importance of IRM and why do we need them? It's because it saves money, it also saves time, it enhances safety of the product, crop products, as well as it protects our health and of course our in terms of sustainability, our land resources as well. As an industry perspective, we say here it saves money. Why? It's because as an industry, even researches that we have done would require significant investments, millions of dollars, and more time to develop our particular product. So when a particular product becomes ineffective, then we have lost all that investment and time because of not taking care of this IRM strategy. Okay. Or if we are a regulator or an extension agent or researcher, uh, this will ensure that we will be having effective and safe products that are available, that can be researched, and will be provided as recommendations to our farmers. And if there are farmer listeners in this webinar, of course, what we wanted as farmer is actually to be protected on the pests. So if we have effective product against a particular pest like fall armyworm, then our crop are protected and we will have a bountiful harvest. So what are the elements or components of this IRM? Uh, First part is actually integrated pest management, which was discussed already by Dr. Quaterno. And this is a very important parameter of the whole total insect resistance management. So it includes, as discussed earlier in the previous presentation, host plant resistance, crop rotation, cultural practices, and I would just like to highlight monitoring and scouting, which is very critical as well to become to make sure that the use of uh, intervention or, for example, chemical control are based on necessary threshold. Okay. In the case of industry, we have two parts in terms of the product that is available in the market. The first one are, of course, insecticides that are applicable and for use to white corn, sweet corn, and open pollinated varieties. So we would like to emphasize that there have been basic studies conducted, so it's very critical to use the label use as well as ensure different mode of action, which I will be discussing in succeeding slides. There is another part. If the BT corn is available, the strategy for that, there should be effective BT protein as well as a refuge to have the susceptible insects. So refuge was discussed a bit by Dr. Karangian earlier, and I will be discussing more in the succeeding slides as well. There's also resistance monitoring and remedial actions as shared by Dr. Quaterno, led by government and, of course, industry as well. And, of course, the education and training and capacity building to complete the whole IRM strategy. Okay, so in the case of particularly for pesticides or PIP like BT corn, these are the key factors to consider to achieve IRM. The first one is actually killing. So we want to make sure that we kill the target insect pest using the products. But of course, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, it will not. There will be some mutations and adaptations. So if there are some of those surviving populations, then another strategy that we can do is actually to preserve susceptible genotype of the insects. And we can do that by putting, for example, refuge that will actually preserve the susceptible genotypes. Okay, and another one is actually to remove the resistant allele of the insect as well. So we will be doing that by, for example, having mixtures of different mode of actions. Okay, so let's discuss about the use of insecticides. So these are the registered insecticides with FPA. And what I would like to highlight here is actually to look at the active ingredient of the product. So when the other aspect is the mode of action. So if we will notice, in this case, we have around 11 different mode of action as per IRAC classification. In this case, for example, there are two active ingredients, thiodicarb or carbosulfan. And this belongs to the same group of mode of action. So that means we should use this insecticide with the same group within a 30-day period only. I'll discuss that later. Uh, so it doesn't necessarily mean that each active ingredient would have different mode of action. Okay, so this is just an example. So the message here is to make sure to look at the mode of action in addition to the active ingredient. And these are the lists that are approved by FPA. So to illustrate that more, here are some examples. Again, always follow the label recommendations. In this case, we have two active ingredients, but they belong to the same mode of action. Okay, so the recommendation is to use different mode of action, and it should be within the 30-day application window. Why 30 days? And it's because generally these are dependent on the life cycle which we have of the insect, which we have seen in the video earlier shown in this webinar. So that's why if we have, for example, we have seed treatment with mode of action, we will have window one. This is again 30 days, a foliar spray, and then we have another window with a different mode of action. So again, critical to follow label recommendations, spray, do scouting to make sure that the spray is based on threshold. Okay. Now, in the case of BT corn or plant incorporated protectant, in this case, the strategy is actually to have a pyramid gene. So that means one corn, BT corn, should have two BT proteins that are effective to control fall armyworm. So in this case, for example, we have one BT gene, BTA, and then another BT gene. So there are two genes in one plant. And there is a potential that one of the in 1,000 would be resistant. So how do we manage this? So if we have this multiple mode of action, then generally this susceptible insect population are actually killed because we have two effective BT proteins or pyramid genes. Sadly, there is always a chance of a potential resistance insect. So when we have resistant insect, which based on modeling could be 1 in a trillion, especially if we have this modeling or pyramid gene, then that's where actually the refuge or non-BT corn has the value. So that refuge will be helpful in making sure that the thriving or surviving population will be susceptible to the BT products. Okay, to illustrate that, for example, we have this BT corn field, and then we have this non-BT corn plants. In a BT corn field, you see, and we see, normally the insects are killed. What happens if there are potential rare survival of larvae? In this case, we can see the purple larvae. Assuming these are the rare resistant insect, this would definitely survive and become adults. So if you notice here at the lower right also, the non-BT, the surviving population are all susceptible. They did not develop any resistance to BT because they are from the non-BT plants. So when they become adults in mate, what happened is that the offspring or the larvae that they produce becomes also susceptible. So again, that's the value of refuge in combination with multiple mode of action or pyramid genes, meaning in combination with, again, two BT proteins in one corn. Okay, so that this resulting population will still be susceptible and can be killed easily by the BT plant. Okay, so some examples of the IRM strategy. These are all different stakeholders, government and industry. So what have been done are, the use of dual mode of action or pyramid genes, again, as discussed earlier, use of refuge and different mode of actions in REAP. Okay, The other one that we continuously do in combination with the government as well is resistance monitoring. So this includes both laboratory as well as field resistance monitoring. Although the good thing is there's no resistance recorded. So these are, again, proactive approaches that the industry and the government are doing. Okay. And this, we also have surveys in outreach, multi-stakeholders that are being done. In the case of the BT Corn, we do surveys every 2 years as a cross-industry effort. And then the next, so we don't just stop with what we have now. So the industries, in coordination with the government, are always looking for new generation technology and other researches to make sure that we have modeled and improve, even enhance our current IRM plan. For example, increasing of refuge, and of course, new other technologies, BT technologies. This is a good example of how various stakeholders work together to make sure that we will be having a successful IRM strategy. Very recently, early this year, there have been series of seminars and workshop conducted by different stakeholders. Okay, there are actually a lot of resources as well. So if you will search and get more information about insect resistance, you can see more resources in the IRAC, in the CABI, Crop Life Philippines, also in the website. There are a lot of videos and infographics that are available. We also have, of course, our government agencies, research agencies in universities, extension offices, and of course, we as industry and Crop Life are here to be as resources as well, to make sure we will have this successful IRM. And again, to summarize, in terms of IRM strategy, it should be holistic and should be through multi-stakeholders, which we have been doing. What we're saying here is to enhance further, because even pests are dynamic, and we are also dynamic. Okay? And then since we have limited resources, we don't have all the resources, our recommendation is actually to focus on risk assessment of the insect itself, to know what would be the focus of the IRM strategy. And of course, information dissemination and tracking can be improved, especially nowadays, using digital tools to make it more live. And then lastly, if we have farmers, we should really follow the IRM recommendations, because there have been so many studies and basis for such recommendations. And we have to follow the IRM strategies by the industries and the government agencies, so that we will preserve the products and technologies, and we can have a bountiful harvest in our corn. So with that, again, thank you very much to everyone who are listening, and to Crop Life for inviting me in this webinar.
Thank you very much, John, for that concise presentation on FAW and IRM. Definitely, we know how important IRM is if we want to control the fall armyworm for a long time and for a number of years. There are some questions here that are being answered by Ms. Wilma. Thank you, Ms. Wilma, for answering in the chat function. And I will probably prioritize here the open questions. A question here for you, John, is that how about third generation coming from heterozygotes? Will they be the same susceptible and not become resistant, even a little percentage?
Yeah. So in that case, again, it would be dependent on the pest biology. So in the Philippines, we don't have much studies on that. But there is a possibility that if it's heterozygous second generation, there's still a possibility that it will be susceptible, meaning it can still be killed by the BT product.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, John. I'll move on to the next. From Dr. Ruth Aldemita. Hi, John. Are there already proven insect-resistant pyramidal genes available, introgressed in Philippine-adapted corn varieties for resistance to FAW? What are the other countries using it?
Yes, so currently, actually, if you look at the FPA also, there have been conditional approval of products that are pyramid genes. So, for instance, actually, Dr. Karangian mentioned we have VT Double Pro as well as Introsec. So these are actually two genes already that are available in the market in the Philippines.
Thank you. There's a question by Dr. Gabi Romero. Let me try to find that because it was partially covered. I think his question is on the recommended refuge for fall armyworm. Let me try to check on that. Can you talk about refuge, John?
Yes. So having the refuge again requires several consideration in terms of the actual scenario on the field. There have been bases. One is percentages. So based on mathematical modeling, it will be dependent on the pest as well as the environmental factors. So with that, it's the industries, respective industries that actually doing research on the recommendations of the refuge based on their understanding, backed by scientific studies.
Thank you, John. That was quick. If we resort to study on this, can we get some funding or other form of support? I don't think that this is
I
for
can
you,
answer
John.
that.
Question. Yeah, yeah. On the copy of presentations, I think that this webinar will be recorded anyway on Facebook, so you can refer to it in the future. So it's going to be saved virtually here. Another question here, do we have information on the degree of fowl infestation under tolerant traits? Do they have refuge? Do you think this is being attacked by FAW?
Yeah.
You
So
get the question, John?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So currently there are different commercial BT products with different refuge sizes. So there are products that are 10% refuge, and there are products that are 5%. So based on the field observation that I have, we have seen, especially the pyramid, the available products with two genes are and that's what we would like to recommend as well. Industry is actually moving to pyramid genes, meaning two or more BT genes that are
John, I think
effective
we're having
to
problems
control
with
an
your
insect.
internet connection. Yeah. John, could you repeat the last sentence again? Because I think you were cut off for a second there.
Yeah. So actually, the industry is moving towards pyramid genes because that would prolong the BT technology.
Mhm. Thank you, John. So now we don't have any live questions, and let me check. I think that more or less that we have answered all of the questions for you, John, in this session. Now, thanks again, John, for answering all of the questions and for the presentation. With this, I now turn over to our
Brian?
executive. Yes,
Brian, can I ask a few questions to John?
sure. Sure, Director Enzo.
John, my first question is, are other companies also advocating IRM?
Yes.
Or
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
almost all seed companies are advocating or promoting IRM?
Yes, Dr. Karangian. So all companies, as an industry as well, we actually have industry meetings as well, and we all promote IRM. Uh, yeah.
Okay. My second question is there a very quick method of analyzing things like DNA testing or what regarding yung infected plant, whether it is a BT or non-BT?
Yes, there is actually a test strip. So it's a quick test that can be completed in just around 2 minutes. So I think all the industries would have that strip test, but it's not on the genetic. It will only identify, for example, the BT. It's specific to a BT protein. So for example, one test strip can identify cry1AB protein. The other test, which is normally on the first generation BT product, and the second generation product, we have another test strip which actually can detect cry2AB proteins. So yes, we have a test kit that can be available for testing in less than as 3 minutes. Yeah. So you
Okay.
just
May we
need
also,
you just need the leaf sample, and then there's a buffer solution, and then we can see if it's BT cry1AB BT or cry2AB BT.
anyway,
Can I follow
I
up?
think Wilma is hearing your explanation so that in the interventions later on, that we may consider kung meron tayong pondo is first a intervention on how to quickly detect or analyze whether BD or non-BD infected. My last question, John, is you said earlier na mga seed companies have variable size refuge. It can be 5%, 10%, 15%. To your knowledge, ano ba yung pinaka, what is the recommended size? Para mag-guidean po natin yung mga RFO, yung regional field offices,
Yeah.
regarding their procurement.
Yeah. So this one are actually already compliant with BPI Biotech. So BPI, once we have the commercial product, then it's already commercially packed with that particular refuge. It is not. It will be available based on those recommendations already. So what you have, what the farmers can buy, are already approved because BPI actually have series of evaluations to approve that particular refuge. But farmers doesn't have to think about the differences or the proportion. What they just need to do is to make sure that the refuge are planted.
Mandatory ba ngayon na yung refuge is now integrated or mixed doon sa total seeds or yung katulad yung dating practice na separate siya?
Right now, commercial seeds, there are two types. One for pyramid. If we have two or more BT
Genes.
proteins, then normally it's 5% mixed
Oo.
currently. And 10%, it's actually, we call it bag and bag, so structured, so it's not mixed because it has only one protein. But again, let's not consider these percentages if we will talk about, because this is specific to Asian corn borer. So if we talk about FAO with a different behavior and habits, then there could be some changes on this based on industry research as well.
Natanong ko yon kasi we have received reports na kung halimbawa separate siya, after when a farmer after planting yung required say quantity of seeds at kung may sobra siya, tendency niya hindi na itatanim yung refuge seeds. So we lost the essence of guarding, of course, our plant to detect whether there is infestation or not. So siguro, yun yung isang guidance na pwede ibigay natin sa mga procuring entities natin sa mga regions. Kasi ma-end yung sinasabi natin na nawala na yung saysay yung refuge mo pag ganun. Pag may sobra ka ng seeds, and then normally yung sobra ay nandun sa refuge, hindi na tatanim yun.
Definitely, yes. And then we are always open for collaborations. We will and for questions as well to really protect the corn industry.
Yung ano nyo, yung VT double pro ninyo is kind na nag-fall under yung sinasabi niya 2
To
VT,
gene.
2
Yes.
gene, ano siya? Okay, that's good.
Yes.
Oh. So that's all from me, Brian. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Enzo. Those are very interesting questions. I don't know if we still have room for one more question. I think Tom Dupo here has a question on how is the refuge in PIP corn handling FAW infestation? Are they being consumed? What happens to the ACB refuge if FAW damages the ACB refuge? So, John.
Yeah. So actually, it's relative new as well to us. All of us were caught by surprise by FAO. So we don't have studies at the moment in terms of different insect pests. So that's why in our recommendation, in my last slide, I've mentioned that there should be studies to ensure in terms of prioritization, mix of insects, in other factors that would affect the efficacy and the durability of the product.
Thank you, John. Now, probably just a comment from Dr. Gabby Romero. Maybe it's more of a question if BPI and RCPCs take note of the corn genotypes, whether it's white, yellow, OPB, hybrid, or single BT when they receive reports of FAW damage. I think this is for Ms. Wilma because it's a question to BPI and RCPCs.
Yes, they are taking note of that yellow or OPB or the variety. But the problem is with regards to GM because some they don't know the event for that cornfield. So I am supposed to ask Dr. Pajardo about how do you know that a plant is really resistant or susceptible to POW if that is a pyramided gene in a corn plant, because I think they have pyramided corn in the field that are affected by POW. So how are you going to know that with a test strip? And I think test strip is just for one gene.
The test strip is specific to protein. So, for example, what is available in the market, we have Cry1AB, the single gene. So that is one test strip. There's also another test strip specific to, for example, the BT Double Pro. It has Cry2AB. So the Cry2AB can be detected. So using a different test strip.
How about if there are stock genes within a corn plant? Is there a test strip for that?
Yes, the stock genes, normally you have two different proteins as well. So the test strip is specific to the protein. So if, for example, if a stock product would have Cry2AB and another Cry1A.105, then it will be tested separately.
Mhm. Thank you, Ms. Wilma. And yeah, I don't think we have any more room for questions. Now let's proceed to the next part of the program. I would like to call on the CropsLife Philippines Executive Director for the wrap-up and way forward, Sir Ed De Luna.
Thank you very much, Brian. First, let me express my sincerest thanks to our resource speakers for today. My very good friend, Dr. Enzo Karangian of the Department of Agriculture, and of course, my good friend also, Wilma. Actually, when I called them to be with us today in this webinar, they said, yes, sir. We are at your service. Thank you very much for that, Enzo and Wilma. Thanks also to Jan for sharing very valuable insights on insecticide resistance management and insect resistance management, which I think is very important to be known by everyone, our colleagues in the government, and of course, the farmers, because these are essential tools in addressing these fall armyworm issues in the corn industry today. I think we have pretty well and very interactive question and answer portion. There are lots of questions from the participants, but due to time constraint, they all cannot be addressed. But we assure you that it will be unanswered questions will be replied to through your emails. And I noticed that there is a very healthy exchange of views also amongst our panelists and resource speakers. So I think we meet the objectives of this webinar. For us to be able to understand the current status of FAW in the Philippines, and for us in the private sector industry to appreciate what the government has been doing. Of course, I would like to congratulate DA for that, for mobilizing the resources to address FAW at the very first opportunity, so that it will not spread further and cause serious damage to the corn industry in the Philippines. So in token of our appreciation to, of course, John, thank you for sharing the industry's perspective. In token of our appreciation, we'll be sending to your respective email accounts this certificate of appreciation for your for sharing your valuable time and expertise in this webinar. To Dr. Lorenzo Carangian, same certificate shall be given and sent to Ms. Wilma Quaterno, and of course to our colleague Jan Pajardo. So moving forward, I think Director Carangian and Wilma have identified the ways forward that we should do to manage FAW in the Philippines. And I think the industry is ready to help you and partner on you on this. I would just like to focus on the very essentials and very critical activities that we collectively should do. Are the following. One is we really need to intensify information, to disseminate information on FAW down to the farmers level, and on how this can be identified and effectively managed. So there will be no stopping us to disseminate this information, so that every farmer, whether his farm has already infestation or whether his farm is not yet infested, he should be armed with the proper information, at least to identify and manage this pest. Of course, the basis of all our actions will be anchored on how reliable information do we have, where the infestation are, what's the degree, how many hectares are affected, how many farmers are affected. So I think DA has already this, but we should maintain to have an organized and systematic reporting of infestation to DA. I would encourage our colleagues in the private sector, if you see any in a farm already infested or has infestation, kindly report to DA or to local government units. We should not withhold any information that we have. Number three is actually, I think the government in the industry has been doing this already. It's just a matter of sharing, because there is no one fit solution to address FAW, as Dr. Enzo and Wilma and Jan has enumerated. All we have to do is, if industry has information or new technologies and strategies, let's share it to the government. If the government has new tools, especially on biocontrol, you share it to us, so that what we'll be able to share with the farmers a complete package of IPM tools to address infestation. Thank you very much, Director Enzo. I put this number 4, but you already mentioned this. We are ready. And we are ready to be included in any representation in your task group in the national and local level, so that we can share, our group can share our strategies, expertise, and others. And also, you can share with us the latest menu that have to be known. So by including us in the task group of the A at the national and local level, would provide us the opportunity for both the government and the industry to collectively address this concern. And of course, this is related, facilitate exchange of information between the government and the private sector and other stakeholders, our colleagues in the academe, our colleagues in the scientific community, meaning a broad range of representations in the different organs or committees or groups that are operating now or maybe organized later to address FAW concerns of the Philippines. To all other way forwards already identified by the Department of Agriculture, we subscribe and we commit our sustained support and cooperation. By the way, before I end, I would like to acknowledge the presence in this webinar of the Board of Directors of CropLife Philippines, headed by our President, who gave the opening remarks. I saw Director Roldan of APA already also joined us in this webinar. And we have also participants from our regional network, CropLife Asia, headed by Ms. Sonny Tababa. And again, colleagues in the Department of Agriculture, from the National Corn Program, from the DA, the Regional Crop Protection Management, nabagong na pala, no? Crop Protection Management. Kasi I know before RCPC, and of course, other guests who joined us this morning. Thank you very much. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of sustained and fruitful partnership between the AA and the industry in the interest primarily of the corn farmers in particular and the Philippine agriculture in general. Salamat po at magandang umaga sa inyo.
Thank you, Sir Ed. for that very inspiring message. Tamang-tama nga po si Sir Ed that it doesn't end here. This is just one of many channels wherein we will exchange information between all stakeholders, private sector, government, and our farmers. Kasi nga po, alam natin na with our collaboration, we will overcome this challenge. And ultimately, tulad nga ng sabi ni Ms. Beng, that we want to help the farmers achieve the highest possible yields using the technologies, expertise, and support from all stakeholders. Before I end, there's a survey that will be emailed to you. Be sure to answer that so that we can get your inputs on this webinar. And yes, that is what's being shown in the screen. And don't forget to follow our social media platforms, CropLife Philippines on Facebook, CropLife Philippines on YouTube, and our website, croplife.org.ph. With that, I hope you enjoyed the session. Thanks to all of the participants. Thanks to those who asked questions and our speakers, definitely. And I hope that everyone has a great morning and a happy weekend ahead. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat.